I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cause a scene. But when my mother called me ungrateful at my father's retirement dinner, after everything, I pulled out my phone, pressed play, and let the whole room hear the truth. Her voice, my brother's laugh, every lie they thought I'd never uncover. Hi, I'm Rachel. I was the daughter who paid the bills, stayed quiet, and kept the peace, until silence cost me everything. What would you do if the people you trusted most expected your loyalty but never gave you love in return? Before we dive into the story, let me learn a bit about you. If you're a charming lady, please leave the number 1 in the comments, and if you're a dashing gentleman, leave the number 2. This way, I can send you a special greeting. Now let's start the story together. I didn't expect a hug. I stopped expecting those a long time ago. But the way my mother took the grocery bag from my hands, fingers barely brushing mine, eyes already scanning past me, made it clear I was no more than a delivery. "I thought you liked rye," she said, inspecting the loaf like it had personally insulted her. "I do. That one's for Dad." She said nothing, just turned toward the kitchen without another word. I followed, out of habit more than hope. The house smelled like lemon cleaner and yesterday's meatloaf, sharp, tired, and slightly sour. The thermostat was set too low again. My fingers ached from the wind outside, and no one had thought to ask if I wanted tea or even water. Jake was sprawled on the couch, one sock on, one off, phone glowing inches from his nose. He didn't look up. I could hear the low hum of a video, something loud and dumb. Dad leaned against the kitchen counter, rubbing the bridge of his nose like he'd been doing that since I moved out at 17. Maybe he had. He didn't look at me either. Just nodded slightly in my direction, the kind of gesture you give a stranger holding your mail. I started unpacking. Eggs, milk, bread, some apples, a can of chili Jake used to like, though I doubted he'd notice. "You know," I said quietly, "it wouldn't kill anyone else to go to the store." My voice wasn't sharp, just tired, but Susan turned like I'd slapped her. "What is that supposed to mean?" "It means this is every Sunday. I bring groceries, I pay the water bill, I check the fridge and refill what's missing. Jake's been home all day. He could have... Oh, so now you're counting." I froze. She didn't yell, but her voice had that tight edge to it. Controlled rage, like a rope being pulled too hard. "You're ungrateful," she snapped. "We never asked you for anything. You do it so you can throw it in our faces." Jake looked up then, but only for a second, then back to his screen. I glanced at Dad. He was still rubbing his nose, still saying nothing. Ungrateful. The word hit harder than it should have. I don't know why. Maybe because it was so completely opposite of the truth. Maybe because it had been sitting under my ribs for years, waiting to be said aloud. I set the chili on the counter, gently. The silence in the room was thick, like fog. "You know what?" I said, softer than I expected. "You're right. You didn't ask." I didn't wait for her to respond. I didn't look back at Jake. I walked to the door, picked up my coat from the hook, and slipped it on slowly, like I had all the time in the world. Robert didn't move. Susan turned back to the fridge like something inside was more urgent than me. Jake paused his video for a moment, then hit play again. I opened the door. Cold air rushed in. I stepped out and let it close behind me. No one followed. The wind caught my hair as I made my way down the driveway. Leaves scraped across the pavement like they were trying to say something, but even they didn't know what. When I got to the car, I pulled out my phone. No messages, no calls, not even a missed FaceTime, just silence. And in that moment, I realized something that settled into me like winter. Silence can be louder than screaming. Sometimes it says exactly what people are too cowardly to admit. They weren't shocked I left. They expected it. No one called that night, or the next day, or the next 3 months. I didn't even realize how long it had been until I flipped the page on the calendar hanging above my fridge and saw the corner of December curling in like an old receipt. The days had blurred in the quiet way they do when nothing urgent happens. No crises, no birthdays, no calls to return. My apartment wasn't much. a second-story unit near the edge of the city, tucked above a locksmith shop that closed by 5 p.m. every day. The walls were thin. The heater groaned when it kicked on. Sometimes it knocked twice like it was asking permission. But it was mine. I'd painted the kitchen cabinets a soft blue the week I moved in. They weren't done well, one of the doors still stuck a little, but I liked the color. It reminded me of calm mornings, something I'd never really had growing up. I bought secondhand curtains, burned a candle that smelled like vanilla and safety, and planted a pothos by the window. It was still alive, which felt like a small miracle. There was peace here. Not joy exactly, not yet, but peace. And that felt like more than enough. The silence gave me room to remember, not nostalgically, just honestly. At 17, I loaded a U-Haul with everything I owned, 2 suitcases, a mattress I bought secondhand, and a folding desk that wobbled if you leaned too hard. I drove it myself to a campus 2 hours away. No one helped me unload. No one called to ask how the drive went. I was just gone. And they let me be. I got my first job that same summer, hostessing at a diner off Route 18. Wore a green apron that smelled like fries no matter how often I washed it. They started letting me wait tables when people didn't show up. I wasn't old enough to serve alcohol, but no one checked. No one cared. I just kept showing up. I kept a mason jar labeled college in my sock drawer. Every tip went in there. When I hit $500, I bought my textbooks. When I hit $1,000, I bought a laptop with a fan that whirred too loud but never failed. My college counselor once asked if my parents were coming to orientation. I said no before she could finish the question. She gave me a long look, then handed me an extra tote bag with the school logo. Said, "You'll need something to carry your grit in." I never forgot that. In those years, I learned how to stretch $1, how to cry without sound in a shared dorm, how to write essays at 3 a.m., while my coworkers at the diner swept floors around me. I also learned not to expect applause. Graduation came and went. I wore the gown. I walked across the stage. I smiled for a camera I borrowed from a friend. My family didn't come. No one asked why, not even me. Now, in this apartment that smelled like candle wax and onion soup, I sat cross-legged on the couch, folding laundry and sipping cold coffee from a chipped mug. There was a peace in folding your own clothes, a kind of quiet validation, each shirt stacked neatly, each sock matched, like I was proving something no one had ever said I couldn't do, but also never believed I could. I lit the candle on the windowsill, watered the pothos, opened a frozen dinner and slid it into the oven. Chicken pot pie. Too salty. Always burned the roof of my mouth. I still liked it. I didn't think of them. Not often. Not with longing. Mostly with numb clarity. They hadn't reached out. Not for holidays, not for updates, not even to ask if I'd made it home that night. The door had closed, and so had they, and I was okay with that. Or I thought I was. I looked at the plant. One leaf was curling yellow. I plucked it gently, tossed it in the trash. Something about the way it dropped, soft, inevitable, felt familiar. That's when my phone buzzed. It sat face down on the kitchen table, screen lighting up the wood grain beneath it. I flipped it over. One message. From Dad. Just 7 words. "Why haven't you sent the mortgage this month?" The message didn't surprise me, but it still hollowed something out. I sat at my kitchen table, feet curled under me, half-finished dinner on the counter. The snow had started just after 5, light flurries drifting past the window like someone had shaken the sky too hard. Everything outside was quiet, and for once so was I. Dad's text glowed on my screen, stark and plain. "Why haven't you sent the mortgage this month?" No hello, no how are you? Just the assumption, the expectation. I left the message unread, pushed my phone aside like it might sting if I touched it too long. I sipped my tea. It had gone cold. The heater clicked on behind me. It wheezed, then groaned like it was tired of trying. I got up, folded my blanket, and walked a slow loop through the apartment. I didn't turn on any lights. A few hours passed. I didn't check my phone again until the candles had burned low and my plate had hardened with untouched chicken. 5 new messages, 3 from Mom, 1 from Jake, another from Dad. They'd changed tone. Urgent. We're behind. Please respond. One from Mom even said, "Don't let pride ruin everything." I almost laughed. Instead, I opened my banking app. The screen loaded with a soft chime. Transaction history stared back at me like a memory I'd forgotten to be angry about. Transfer $750, memo mortgage. Transfer $300, memo utilities. Transfer $225, memo grocery reimbursement. Month after month. Consistent, quiet, always from my account. I clicked back 5 months, then 7. I went all the way to the first transfer I labeled family support. It was almost 2 years ago. I remembered the day. The sink had broken and Mom had called me from the kitchen, her voice wrapped in soft panic. She hadn't said help. She'd said, "Your father and I are just stretched thin." I took a deep breath and let it sit at the bottom of my lungs. Then I called the bank. A woman answered, polite and warm. She had a Midwest kindness to her voice, like she smiled a lot, even on phone calls. After the usual security questions, she asked for the property address. I gave it. There was a pause, clicking, more silence. Then, "It looks like the account has been in pre-foreclosure status since early spring." I blinked. "Pre-foreclosure?" "Yes, ma'am. Payments from the previously listed account, yours, stopped in February." My throat tightened. Stopped, but Another pause. "There have been some partial payments," she said gently, "but nothing consistent, and not from the original source." I thanked her, politely, like I was made of manners and not disbelief. Then I hung up. I stood in my kitchen holding the phone, staring at the blank wall above the stove. It was bare, except for a single nail that used to hold a calendar. I'd taken it down last spring when I realized I was the only one flipping the months forward. It hit me slowly. They stopped using my money for the mortgage, but they kept taking it. And I never asked. I never checked. I just gave. My hands shook, just a little. Not from rage, from the weight of something that had finally shifted inside me. Not a crack, a break. I scrolled back through the messages. Mom, we're desperate. Dad, we've never needed you more. Jake's was next, short. Are you really going to let them lose the house just to prove a point? A point? I stared at those 10 words like they held a joke only I wasn't in on. Suddenly, I remembered the time Jake spilled cranberry juice on the couch and blamed me. I was 9. He was 6. I didn't even like cranberry juice, but Mom had believed him. She always did. The couch had never been the same. Neither had I. I set the phone down, not gently, not harshly, just final. I whispered to no one in particular, not even myself. They never wanted me, just my help. And then, for the first time in months, I cried. But not because they hurt me, because I had finally stopped making excuses for why they didn't love me back. I didn't plan to call Jake. I'd told myself I was done, that I didn't need another round of dodging or deflection. But there's a kind of silence that doesn't feel like peace. It feels like something unfinished scratching at the inside of your ribs. That night, it got loud enough that I picked up the phone. He answered on the second ring. "Hey," he said, like nothing was wrong. No panic, no apology, just the casual drawl of someone who still believed he was too charming to be held accountable. "Hey," I replied. My voice was level. I was tired of trembling. A beat passed. "I guess you've been hearing from Mom and Dad," he said, chuckling a little, like this was some awkward family mix-up over a holiday casserole. "I've been hearing from a bank," I said. That shut him up. "I just have one question," I continued. "Where did the money go?" He exhaled, stalling. "Rachel, come on, you know how it is. Things pile up, groceries, repairs, life, you know." I closed my eyes. That line. Life, you know. Like life had a personal vendetta against him, like bills were attacking him at random. "Jake," I said calmly, You knew the mortgage wasn't getting paid. Silence. It stretched long, almost a full 10 seconds, but not the good kind, not the kind that meant thoughtfulness. This was the silence of someone trying to craft a lie that sounded close enough to mercy. Then finally he sighed. That sigh. The one he used after being caught skipping class in 10th grade, after Mom blamed the teacher for his missing homework, after Dad gave him money for books that somehow turned into sneakers. It was the sigh of someone who expected forgiveness because they'd always gotten it. Yeah, he muttered. That was all. No denial, no excuse, just, yeah. I sat with that word like it was a bruise under my skin. I didn't speak right away. I let the weight of it settle between us. You could have said something, I said, not because I needed an explanation. I just wanted to hear what kind of story he'd spin. I didn't know what to say, he replied. Mom thought it was better if you didn't worry. I laughed once, dry and low. She thought lying was better than worrying? Jake shifted, the sound of a chair creaking on the other end. It's not like that. She just figured we'd catch up. You figured I'd keep paying. He didn't respond. I looked down at my chipped mug. The tea inside had gone cold again. You know, Jake, when you dropped out of school, Mom told everyone you were taking time to find yourself. When you quit 3 jobs, she blamed the bosses. But when I worked 2 shifts and sent money, no one said a word. He stayed quiet. She once called me selfless, I said. Now she calls me spiteful. More silence. They weren't confused, I said quietly. They just got comfortable. That time he didn't sigh. He didn't breathe. He just hung there on the other end of the line, silent, like he didn't know how to be caught without a net. I should go, he finally mumbled. Yeah, I said. You should. I ended the call, set the phone on the table, let the room fill back up with quiet. The heater kicked on. The pothos plant rustled in the window breeze. A moment passed, then the screen lit up again, Susan Monroe calling. I stared at it, thumb hovering over the screen. I didn't want more excuses, but part of me, the smallest, most tired part, needed to hear what she'd say when she knew I knew. I pressed, answer. I didn't come to ruin anything. I came to smile, clap, and quietly leave. That was the plan. The community center in Topeka was done up in its usual borrowed dignity. White plastic tablecloths, string lights drooping over the buffet table, a Bluetooth speaker struggling through a jazz playlist. Someone had brought a cake with "Happy Retirement, Robert," written in green icing, slanted, trembling letters that sank slightly toward one corner. I arrived 5 minutes late and still too early. My chair near the back squeaked when I sat. No one noticed. Or maybe they did and didn't want to. I hadn't RSVP'd, but they'd always assumed I'd show up for the good optics. I wore navy slacks and a cream sweater. Nothing flashy, nothing soft. Just polite, invisible fabric. The room smelled like coffee in paper cups and roast beef in aluminum trays. I watched Jake laugh with 2 cousins I barely recognized. I watched Mom glide between tables with that practiced smile of hers, the one that crinkled in the right places but never touched her eyes. Dad stood near the far wall, his tie too tight, one hand half in his pocket like he didn't know what to do with it. I spooned lukewarm mashed potatoes onto my plate. They collapsed under their own weight. The program started after dessert. A neighbor from across the street gave a short speech about how Robert Monroe had always been steady. Not brilliant, not ambitious, just steady. A coworker joked about staplers and quiet lunches. The laughter was forced, but kind. Then Susan stood. She didn't use a mic. Her voice was strong enough. She cleared her throat, smiled out across the room like a queen at her banquet, and began. My husband worked for 36 years without ever asking for anything in return. He showed up, provided quietly without complaint, and I supported him in every way. She paused, letting the echo of her virtue bounce once or twice. We raised 2 children, she continued. It wasn't always easy, but we did everything for them. Everything. Some children forget that. My fork stopped halfway to my mouth. I saw Jake smirk, just a twitch at the edge of his cheek. I pushed back from the table, slow, controlled. I reached for my coat, slid one arm in, then she said it. "I think what hurts most," Susan added, eyes sweeping the room, "is when your own children turn ungrateful." I didn't feel my feet move. One moment I was standing beside my chair. The next, I was at the center of the room. Dear friend, what would you do if you were in my shoes? I bet you can't guess what's coming next. But before we go any further, drop a 5 in the comments if you're still with me, because what happens next might just leave you speechless. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I took out my phone, and I pressed play. The room didn't gasp. It exhaled. Through the speaker came my mother's voice, tight and clipped from a week ago. She won't ask questions. She never has. We'll just keep it going until she finally stops playing martyr. Then Jake's laugh, low and amused. As long as she wires it, what's the harm? Silence. Forks paused mid-air. Grandfather Monroe, the only person who hadn't spoken all evening, stood. He didn't look at me. He didn't look at her. He just walked out. The string lights flickered once above the cake. Susan's mouth opened, then closed. Robert stared at the floor. Jake looked at me like I'd betrayed a confidence instead of exposing one. I said nothing. I didn't need to. I slipped my phone back into my pocket, picked up my coat fully, and left before anyone could find their words. Outside, the night was cold, crisp. My breath came out in little clouds. For the first time in years, it didn't feel like I was holding it in. A week later, I got the letter. It came in a flat white envelope, thick paper, return address from a law office I recognized, but had never entered. I opened it slowly. My name was listed under primary title holder. Theirs were not. No message, no postscript, just facts, sealed and certified. The group thread used to be named Family. This morning I renamed it Closed Account. I didn't do it out of spite. It just felt accurate, like relabeling a folder full of things you don't need anymore, but haven't deleted yet. The phone was already buzzing before I opened my eyes. It had been buzzing for days, calls, voicemails, texts that ricocheted between guilt, blame, and desperation. You didn't have to go that far. You're still part of this family. We were going to fix it. And my favorite, how could you do this to us? The question echoed in my kitchen as I poured coffee into a mug with a hairline crack down one side. It never leaked, just split slightly under heat, kind of like me. The winter sunlight filtered through the blinds, soft and angled. I didn't answer the phone. I didn't even silence it. I just let it ring. Some silences are intentional. This one was earned. Later that morning, I drove across town to the notary, a small office above a hair salon. The receptionist offered me peppermint tea and asked if I wanted to sit by the heater. "No, thank you," I said. "I'm fine." The paperwork was simple. Final signatures, a few initials, an ID check. The woman behind the desk smiled at me, not kindly, not condescendingly, just professionally, like I was any other person finally closing a loop. When she handed me the sealed copies, she said, "Take care of yourself." I nodded. I planned to. That afternoon, I made dinner, chicken and rice. Too much onion, but it filled the apartment with a warm, lazy smell. I didn't plate it neatly, just scooped it into a bowl and left the rest on the stove. I didn't do the dishes. I lit a candle instead, jasmine and clove, and watched the flame flicker like it was trying to forget something too. Then I picked up my phone. The notifications had stacked into a wall, 34 unread messages, 7 missed calls. The group thread was still open, still titled Family, still filled with lists I used to keep, bills, reminders, grocery items only I remembered to buy. I stared at it for a long moment, then tapped Edit Name. Typed slowly, closed account, muted the thread, archived it, deleted their numbers. Not out of anger, not even sadness, out of clarity. Because when someone shows you that your presence only matters when tied to what you give, the most generous thing you can do is leave. I sat back down at the table, bowl of food still warm. I ate quietly, thought about repainting the kitchen cabinets in spring, maybe sage green this time. Something new. The plant by the window was still alive. A single new leaf had started to curl open. I reached over and touched it gently, then looked outside. The street was quiet, empty. No wind, no cars, no footsteps. I smiled. Not because I'd won, but because I was finally done. And for the first time in years, being done didn't feel like failure. It felt like freedom. Some endings don't come with fireworks or apologies, just a quiet morning, a warm mug, and the choice to let go. In the stillness, I realized I hadn't lost a family. I'd simply stopped financing one. Sometimes, love isn't about holding on. It's about knowing when to stop giving to those who only remember your worth when it comes with a receipt. And in that knowing, there's a strength, not loud, but lasting. If this story reminded you of a moment you chose peace over pleasing, I'd love to hear it. Let's keep this space honest, kind, and open, just like the stories we tell.